Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. This week, we're talking about naked carbs. Have you heard it, Gwen?
No, I have not.
Yeah. So
very curious.
So it's been popping up a lot lately, like TikTok, social media, and then some articles. And I figured whenever that happens, I'm like, okay, we got to talk about it here to give everybody sort of the lay of the land, right? Make it make sense. So that has it's not a new concept, but it brings it to the forefront. So let's talk about what it means, what the implications are, all that kind of stuff. So fundamentally, the phrase naked carbs has become like a wellness buzzword, but essentially it's just describing eating carbohydrates by themselves. And I want to go further on that to explain that it's eating high glycemic or simple carbohydrates on their own. And the reason why that's sort of in the zeitgeist is because more and more blood sugar balance and blood sugar health is in the zeitgeist. And so when we eat simple carbohydrates on their own, it can lead to more dramatic spikes and drops of blood sugar. Now, if you're a longtime listener of Salad with a Side of Fries, you know, right? Carbs are an essential macronutrient, which means the body needs them. And carbohydrates are the preferred fuel of the body. The key is it's about the quality of those carbohydrates, right? Namely, the quality of those carbohydrates comes down to fiber and the vitamins and minerals that make the difference, right? The other thing you know, if you're a longtime listener, is that you know how to blunt the impact of higher glycemic carbohydrates for when you want to have them, right? So we know we could eat less of them at a time, and we can pair the higher glycemic carbs with protein, quality fat, and fiber to slow the digestion and absorption of those carbohydrates, thereby sort of blunting the impact and then managing the blood sugar spikes and drops. So in the naked carbs buzzword world, right, we can say naked carbs are the simple, higher glycemic carbohydrates eaten on their own. The protein, quality fat, and fiber are the clothes so that the carbohydrates are no longer naked, right? So it seems like this is taking over social media and pop culture because, like I said, there's been a lot of conversation in the zeitgeist about blood sugar balance. And there's also been, I think, some newer research. So I want to preface all this. I'll walk through some of that research, but I want to preface all of this by saying a couple things. Number one is you can 100% stick to protein, fiber, quality fat as your reliable approaches. I also think they are potentially more reliable than some of what's coming up in these studies. I also see what's happening in some of these studies as tracking back to these nutrients of the protein, fiber, quality fat. And I think there's a greater possibility of person-to-person variation with these other methods. So I'm going to walk through them, but I want to start with that. So with that said, what's sort of been in the zeitgeist is using vinegar or acidic foods, dairy, beans, olive oil, and butter. So we'll take each one of those sort of in turn. We'll start with the vinegar. So vinegar or acidic foods. So there was a study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition that the researchers looked at blood glucose and insulin levels after eating bread by itself compared to having bread with vinegar. They concluded eating bread with vinegar significantly reduced both glucose spikes and the insulin spike compared to bread alone. Caveat on this, there were 12 participants, and they were otherwise healthy individuals. So they didn't necessarily have a challenge around blood sugar, insulin sensitivity. If somebody did have some of those metabolic challenges, I don't know if it would work the same way. They also noted that participants were more satisfied with the bread and vinegar combination compared to bread alone. This to me could also just be a function of sort of a few things. One is just the flavor profile, right? Like you're hitting a lot more taste buds, which can certainly impact satiety and how satisfied we feel. But the other thing is it could be that because of the combination, we're slowing how quickly that fuel moves through the system, right? So we feel more satisfied. There was another randomized trial that showed a similar effect with lemon juice versus vinegar. And the thinking of how this works, or sort of the mechanism, is that so digestion typically begins in the mouth, right? We're chewing, the mouth has these enzymes that start to break down food. Researchers think that the vinegar or acid inhibits some of the enzymes in the mouth. So then essentially the carbohydrates are less broken down before hitting the stomach, which also might say to me, for somebody who has digestive health challenges, that might cause a challenge more than a benefit. But, that's the vinegar piece, or acidic foods. Next one is dairy. So this one was a study that looked at eating rice alone versus eating rice with milk. It was white rice. So white rice on it, alone had a glycemic index of 100, right? Whole milk added to it brought the glycemic index down to 59. So that's dramatic. Low-fat milk, though, had less of an impact, bringing it from 100 to 84. So to me, all this is showing us is that fat and a little bit of protein in the whole milk blunts that glycemic impact, which we already know because you listen to Salad with a Side of Fries, right? So I'll also note in this study, they found butter had less impact than yogurt and cheese. So to me, again, this comes back to the function of probably the protein in there of butter versus yogurt and cheese. I also think the quantity, right? Like you're probably using more yogurt or cheese than you would butter if adding it to something. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see more research. There was also some research looking at a potato with butter. So the butter on the potato, as we know, brought down the glycemic impact of the potato on its own. And again, I think another reason this is coming up right now. So research shows that pairing these foods together slows gastric emptying in a similar fashion to medications that are currently designed to help people eat less, right? And part of that is a hormone called GLP that's designed to slow intestinal transit time. So essentially, this approach of combining foods works on the same hormone. We certainly need more research to truly say that dietary fat is a potent stimulus for GLP, but it makes the argument that our health could benefit from understanding food combinations and that you may not need a pharmaceutical for some of this impact. In the research on beans, it was soybeans added to rice, and they saw about a 25% reduction in glycemic impact. To me, this is sort of like, duh, soybeans are giving us protein and soluble fiber. We knew this. We've been talking about this, right? And speaking of plant-based things, like we talked about in our episode this week, right? We talk about rice and beans together create a complete amino acid profile, balancing our macronutrients. Like this just makes sense, right? It's logical. And then there was one more study that looked at olive oil and butter. And this one, researchers compared white bread alone to white bread with butter, olive oil, or grapeseed oil. So they concluded all fats lowered glycemic response to bread, and there was no significant difference between the types of fat when eaten with the bread. So again, we get this, we know this. Here, they think that the mechanism might be that the fat binds to the structure of the starch, and then that inhibits the enzyme activity that breaks down the starches, right, for them to be absorbed in the system. So essentially, like inhibiting this enzyme slows the process, slows the release of the fuel into the system. So the bottom line of all of this, right, what all of this shows us is exactly what you already knew from listening to Salad with a Side of Fries, right? So here's what we want the masses to know. We can manage spikes and drops in our blood sugar. And by the way, we want our blood sugar to fluctuate, right? You don't want a flat line. We want our blood sugar and insulin to function and respond to what we're eating. We just want to keep those highs and lows in sort of like this middle range, right? When we do this consistently, it can improve not only your weight management, but your metabolic health, your cardiovascular health, the body's inflammatory response, essentially whole body health. And again, as I always say, it's not what to eat, because choose a cucumber over a Twix. It's how to eat, right? Have the bread basket with the meal or after rather than before or by itself, so that we are pairing our naked carbohydrate, the bread alone, with protein, fiber, quality fat from your nutritious meal. And therefore, we are managing the blood sugar spikes and drops, the satiety of the meal that we're eating, how long it lasts us, and it translates into overall health. So that's the deal on naked carbs. Gwen, any thoughts, anything you want to add?
I love this idea of naked carbs. No, I think it makes so much sense.
Well, we want dressed carbs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's fantastic. It's just a really interesting, it was like, wow, yeah, of course it makes sense. So, yeah. And of course, I think that mainstream, again, all this information and all of this stuff needs to be more mainstream. And that's, hopefully we just keep doing our thing. And all of a sudden, somebody who's 3 meal a day person, all of a sudden's like, oh, I'm going to put my steak over a salad. Wow. Okay. Maybe this time I don't need the steak. I'll just have the salad. So it's really amazing. And you're incredible. I'm so thrilled that I got to meet you and do this podcast, because you are so knowledgeable and explain it so well. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you. And as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I'm at Jen Trepeck, JenNTrepeck. Website is asaladwithasideofries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. I want to hear from you. Truly, I want to hear your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. Gwen Keneally, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
Absolutely. And friends, if you are not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/saladwithasideofries. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, and most importantly, it supports your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the Crappy Jack cakes with red pepper sauce from our featured guest, Gwen Keneally's book, The Plantastic Cookbook. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.